Now this video is a little longer than most, but it'll be a really helpful explanation for direct objects. So today's topic, like I said, is direct objects as well as the basic direct object pronouns. What is a direct object? Well, let's take a look at the sentence. I study Spanish. What are the parts of this sentence? Well, we've got three words, and they each play a different role. So I is your subject. It's what does the action. It's doing the verb. So that's your subject of the sentence, whatever does the action word. Our action word is study, that's our verb. Now, if we ask yourself, what's being studied? Spanish, that's our direct object. So the noun that receives the action in a sentence is called the direct object. So once again, this word has to be a noun to be considered a direct object. It receives the action of the verb. Now, it's important to note that not all sentences have a direct object. You need to be able to identify if there is one in a sentence before you can actually utilize them in Spanish. So in I study Spanish, yes, there was a direct object. But in I run a lot, when we talk about running, there's no noun being affected by that. So therefore, it is not a direct object situation. I sing well. If I look at my verb sing, we don't know what's being sung. There's no noun after that. So therefore, there's no direct object in the sentence. Now, we already know that nouns can be replaced by pronouns. So the job of a pronoun is to replace a noun. They're helpful because they give us more variety and we sound less robotic in our speech and writing. So for example, if I've got Maria, I can get rid of Maria and use ella instead. Ella being the pronoun form of Maria. So she. Now, direct objects we know are nouns, so they can also be replaced by their own pronoun, direct object pronouns known as DOPs or DOPs, depending on how you say it. Here's the four we're going to focus on today. More do exist, but we're going to work with these. We've got singular, plural, masculine, and feminine categories in this little chart here. Now, if we're going to be replacing words, like because they're pronouns, of course, we need to know what these words actually mean and what they translate to. So if we start here with lo translates as either it or him, and it's masculine and singular. It or her we get from la, and both of these terms can mean you when we're referring to usted in a direct object sort of way. So I take you to school, for example. Los and las both mean them, can be used for people or objects, or you as in like an ustedes direct object situation. Alright, so let's talk about how to replace the direct object with the DOP. So I've got some sample sentences here. We need to find the original direct object so that we know what to replace it with. So find your verb. What's being spoken here? Spanish. So Spanish is español. And instead of using that word, we can say lo for it, to say I speak it. Now our verb has, what do we have? Books. Those are libros, which are masculine and plural. So we're going to use the DOP los in our replacement. Reads, what's being read? The magazines. Those are revistas. So we're going to use las, which is plural and feminine, for our replacement to say them. Alright, now let's see some samples. So, do you speak Spanish? Now, we don't say, yes, I speak Spanish, typically when we speak back. That's too robotic and too repetitive. Instead, we say, I speak it. This is where our DOP is going to come in. It's going to help us sound a little more authentic. So our reglas, of course there are rules, it's grammar. The big thing with these is placement. Now that we know what the four DOPs are that we're using, and again there are more, where do we put them? Well, the first situation that's the most common is before a conjugated verb. Every sentence will have a conjugated verb because it has to be a sentence. So if you know this rule, you're good to go. So for example, if I've got I speak it, referring back to our Spanish. In Spanish, I would write that yo lo hablo. Hablo is our conjugated verb, so I place the lo that replaces Spanish before the verb as its own separate word. That's situation numero uno. Numero dos. We could attach the DOP to the end of an infinitive. An infinitive, again, being an unconjugated verb. So what's that look like? Well, unlike our first sentence, we need an infinitive. So let's go with I want to speak it. We're going to say deseo hablarlo. Hablar being our infinitive, so we can attach that lo right to the end. It's all one word, no spaces there. Hablarlo. It could also go before the deseo where the arrow just pointed. So you could say lo deseo hablar. That's also considered grammatically correct because deseo is a conjugated verb. Now, there's another scenario we need to keep in mind. That you could attach these to the end of a present participle. That's the verb's ing form or the gerund form of a verb. They can also be attached to commands, but we're not going to get into that right yet now. So, for example, I am speaking it. It's happening now, so we use the present progressive. Estoy hablándolo. So that hablando is our present participle, the ing. So I attach the lo right to the end, but I have to remember to add an accent mark over the a in ando to keep the pronunciation as it should be. So estoy hablándolo. Of course, estoy is conjugated, so I could put the lo out in front if I wanted to and say lo estoy hablando. But most people will use the way I've written because I think it's the thought process that matches best how we are trying to say the ideas. Again, there's 3 different placement opportunities, but if you know the first one, you'll be set because each sentence needs a conjugated verb. All right, let's take a look at some short answer questions and how we can use DOPs to respond in a more authentic way. So first we got to look at these verbs. They're all yes or no questions because they start with verbs, and they're all in the to form to keep it simple, so that way we keep our replies pretty basic, so we're focusing more on the DOPs and how they work. So let's take a look at this together. What's being spoken here? Spanish. That's the word I'm going to replace in my reply because that's the noun receiving the action. So because it's masculine and singular, I'll use lo in my reply. Now I'll start answering my question. Si yo lo hablo. Hablo is conjugated, so the lo needs to be placed before it. Yes, I speak it. Do you speak Spanish? Yes, I speak it. Then in número dos. ¿Tienes tus carpetas? Tienes is our verb. What do we have? Carpetas. That's feminine and plural, so we're going to replace it with las. Sí, yo las tengo. Do you have your folders? Yes, I have them. Tengo is conjugated, so the las goes before. Llevas. What are we taking? Them to school. So instead of ellos, we're going to put los. Sí, yo los llevo. Do you take them to school? Yes, I take them. Miras la tele? What's being watched? The TV. Feminine. So, no. Yo no la miro. Miro is conjugated, so it goes before. Are you watching TV? No, I'm not watching it. Remember, these are conjugated verbs, so all of those DOPs need to go before the verb as a separate word. Now let's talk about some cases with infinitives. Remember, each of these could be done 2 different ways. So first, if we talk about attaching to the infinitive, we can see a version here. So, ¿necesitas llevar el libro a la clase? Do you need to take the book to class? What's being taken? The book, libro. So we're going to say, sí, necesito llevarlo. Yes, I need to take it. We're attaching that it to the end of llevar in the infinitive. Now, of course, we could also say, sí, lo necesito llevar. Necesito is conjugated, so I can also put that lo out in front of the verb. Still says the same thing. Yes, I need to take it. ¿Tienes que mirar el programa? Do you have to watch the show? Sí, tengo que mirarlo. Again, attached because it's an infinitive. Or, same sentence, put in a different order. Sí, yo lo tengo que mirar. Yes, I have to watch it. So again, with these, the placement can vary, but these are your options. Then what about our present progressive? ¿Estás mirando el programa? Are you watching the program? What's being watched? The program, which is masculine. So we'll replace that with lo for it. Now in my reply, remember present progressive uses a star first. So sí, estoy mirándolo. So I attach that lo right to the end of the present participle and add an accent over the ando to keep the pronunciation. Or I could say, sí lo estoy mirando. Because estoy is conjugated, I can put the direct object pronoun in front of that verb. So that's a quick intro to direct objects and some of the DOPs that you're going to see, lo, la, los, and las. They take some getting used to, but once you practice, they get easier and easier. So don't give up. Just keep practicing. Gracias, adiós, y buena suerte.